All right, we are live, Mr. President. So if you'd like to start.
Oh, you bet. You bet. Thank you. We're reconvening the Westlake City Schools Board of Education special meeting for Monday, May the 4th, 2020. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
flag
Flag
of the
United States of America,
America.
and
to
to
the
the republic
Republic
for which it stands,
stands one nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We say hello to those that are joining us tonight, and we have a special recognition today for any of our staff joining us. We are typically roaming the halls this week and recognizing our amazing staff, and we greet you tonight and we say thank you for all you do always, and especially thank you for all that you do during these times. Your outstanding work is recognized, and we say thanks. I'm moving to the approval of the agenda, but before we approve the agenda, I would like to add, if I may, I'd like to add a resolution to render complaint disposition under board items, suggesting that to be item A under 4 board items. I move to do that. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
This is a vote to approve the agenda with the addition of a resolution to render complaint disposition added as item 4A. Kraft,
Yes.
Fanukin,
Yes.
Lazinski,
Yes.
Piernot,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
This time I'd like is there a motion to approve the agenda?
No,
So
that was
moved.
the approval. That was the approval of agenda. We're okay with that now.
Okay, so we'll do. I'll move on to board items. We've all had an opportunity to review the resolution to render complaint disposition. There a motion to approve 4A.
So moved?
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
This is to approve item 4A, which is the resolution to render complaint disposition. This has been added by the board, and all board members have it in front of them and have reviewed it. Piernot,
Yes.
Fanukin,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Lazinski,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
And moving on to discussion items, including the district finances, including payments and refunds.
I'll start off here. I know we've had a number of conversations regarding the finances and where it stands due to the current pandemic that we're experiencing. Where we are right now is we're looking to close our books for the month of for the month of April. Usually it takes us a couple of business days to do that. I expect to be closed hopefully tomorrow if nothing goes wrong. At that time, I'm going to start comparing our revenues that we've received over the past couple of months with the prior couple of years up through April 30th to see exactly how this is affecting us. Obviously, we know we have some decreases in our revenue sources, whether that's pay to participate, whether that's our lunch accounts. We don't have the sales at our lunch program right now, as well as we don't have revenue coming into our Link Project Link program. And we're trying to gauge where we are with this. Additionally, we're starting to track each of our POs that we're doing for product or equipment that we've purchased or in the process of purchasing, specifically for a response to the coronavirus and COVID-19. And that can be some more cleaning materials or cleaning supplies we've had to buy, some new cleaning equipment. It could be preparation for the upcoming school year as we look to possibly purchase, thermometers or other type of PPE for staff members. So we're working through all of that right now. So next week, I'm planning on meeting with our finance committee, which is Mr. Kraft and Mr. Fanukin and Dr. Goggin. and we can go through some of those numbers to see where we're at financially. As we spoke about at our last board meeting, school districts are affected differently through this coronavirus, mostly because we aren't seeing the large scale immediate impact that cities, counties, and states are due to their reliance on sales tax and income tax. A school district, as our reliance is on property tax, we're going to see a slower impact on us as we go into the tax collection season, which really starts here next month in June, as our first collections come in late June or early July. So we are expecting that it will impact us, and we're preparing the district for that and our finances accordingly. But I wanted an opportunity to have a discussion with the board of any of the topics that you'd like to talk about, or Dr. Goggin, if you'd like to add in anything regarding the finances as well.
Not yet, and I know that we have, there are some areas, we're hopeful that it does balance out a little bit, because there are areas we're not spending. We are saving in substitutes, we are saving in gas and other type of costs that are associated. But I think Mr. Hopkins is right. I think when we get our arms around it, we're going to see an increase in cost in cleaning supplies, potentially more cleaners that are going to be needed to be as thorough as we need. So we are watching that to see how that progresses.
Mr. Hopkins, has the county sent out anything to the treasurers, or as relates to maybe how collections are going, what they anticipate, or anything?
No, I will tell you, I think it's just a hair too early at this point. The county has put out their schedule of their distributions, but they did put a caveat on there that this is the current planned schedule.
Yeah.
So that distribution schedule may change. But as of today, there's not been any direction on how they feel collections are coming in. I think it's just far too early to make that determination.
Because I know a lot of people obviously make their tax payments along with their mortgage payments, and in that particular case, a lot of banks are giving grace periods, sometimes up to a year, on making mortgage payments. And since they are tied to those, that's why I just kind of worry about that combination there. But
I agree. I think there's some risk involved there, specifically with the escrow accounts that you're speaking of. My hope would be, as the banks would still communicate to the homeowners that, taxes would still have to be paid, as well as their property insurance if they're doing it through an escrow account.
yeah.
Has there been a delay in property taxes at all for the schedule? I know there's been, just for the state and federal income taxes, there were.
No, our first, typically we don't get our first advance until June anyways. So we're too early in the process. Typically speaking, your taxes are due end of June, early July. So that collection, starts coming in sometimes a little bit early, where we do get an advance in June, a small advance, but usually it's July and August where we get our large payments from the county.
Okay.
Does it make sense to, I know comparisons, economy-wise, some comparisons say to 2008, 2009, take a look at revenue, say at that time, and build those into any modeling or forecasting?
I would certainly be open to doing that. I think the one area I want to be cautious on is, and as we compare back to the Great Recession of that era, is I'm not exactly sure what type of rebound we're going to have this time through. If this is a quick rebound, logic would tell us that it should have limited impact on property taxes. As the property values maintain similar valuation, property taxes would only be negatively impacted based on the collection delinquencies, if we have delinquent payments. Unfortunately, in 2008, in that era, or right around 2008, we saw actual mass decreases in value of property valuation across, the entire country. If that would be the case, then we're going to have some concerns as we go, which would be long-term, both on the immediate collections, but also long-term as we hope to get the property values back up to where they were pre-COVID-19.
Got it. And our meeting next week, that date is when?
I believe the suggestion was thrown out. No, for the finance committee, the suggestion was thrown out, I believe, for the 12th, a week from tomorrow, if that works for both you, Mr. Kraft, and you, Mr. Fanouken.
4 PM it was, right?
I can email or text you exactly what the correct time is.
Okay.
And both you and Dr. Geigen talked about some savings and that we're not spending, but some additional costs for an opportunity to review some of that.
We certainly can. We're right now, we have some numbers based on our substitute teachers, as we know that we're not going to be paying any more subs through our ESC contract between obviously now and the end of the school year, as we're not utilizing substitute teachers in that capacity. So I can certainly grab those numbers, both our expenditures and revenues from the end of May, and look at prior years and make some estimates on other areas such as transportation.
Thank you. Anything else regarding district finances, including payments and refunds?
Yeah, I think a topic that we want to talk through is, as we're finishing up a memorandum of understanding with our teachers union, one of the items that we have to sort through is the payment of supplemental contracts for the spring, primarily focusing on athletic coaches at this point. We do have other supplementals that are still ongoing, department chairs as an example, potentially some class advisors, different things that continued even though school had closed. But an obvious one for us to look at right now would be looking at the spring coaching supplementals, because obviously the games have been canceled. So that's a topic that I do have Tony Cipollone and Paul Wilson here as well. And sent you some paperwork to kind of look through some different ideas because our coaches still have been engaged with our students, and there's some other things we'd like them to do as well. So we would like to open some discussion about those supplementals, if that's okay.
Please.
Okay. Can we turn on Tony and Paul, bring them into the conversation here? There they are.
Mr. Wilson? Mr. Cipollone? Hello. Welcome.
Thanks.
So we've had some conversations about what we're looking at for the spring supplementals. Our proposal is to create two categories, one at 15% and one to be at 50%, and one at a percent that we decide upon or at least discuss tonight. Even though the games have been canceled, seasons do not start when the games start. We have preseason, we have a lot of work that happens prior to. Our baseline that we were, and there's also closing too. You still need to collect the uniforms, do the inventory, do your budgets and all the other type of things that you need to do for a sports team. And so our baseline, if folks stopped at the closure date, then we're looking at 50% of that contract. Now, we also look at this as an opportunity where we do have different goals, different things that we want to look at inside our athletic departments. And so Tony Cipollone, who's also on this conversation, he found some webinars that are actually pretty extensive. If you look at it, many of them are 5-6 chapters and be able to go through and get certificated in some ways. And two that we would highlight and say that you would have to do would be engaging effectively with parents and student mental health and suicide prevention. And those would be mandatory, that if you want to move past that 50%, you have to engage in those. Then another one is picking one of a group of ACL prevention appearance and performance enhancing drugs, bullying, hazing, coaching unified sports, heat illness prevention, NCAA eligibility, protecting student athletes from abuse, social media, sports nutrition, sportsmanship, and understanding vaping and e-cigarettes. And one of the things that, so they would have to participate in two of those, the two that I said in the beginning, those are ones everybody has to do, and then pick one from the other group. And then it's being able to, prior to the season starting, to be able to help Tony kind of discuss those topics with coaches. So then, because we know that only the spring coaches will be getting this. So if they can help us out with having some coaches meetings with the fall coaches and winter coaches as well. And also with that, also continue to engage with their student athletes, because didn't they also push out the contact time to May 31st? I thought Tony, did they extend the amount of time that coaches?
Yeah, actually, it's been pushed out. Yes. You're
But I
correct.
thought it was to like May 31st or something. So it's
Yeah,
extended.
and I would think that as long as what we've been told, as long as school facilities keep being shut down, that it'll keep getting pushed, is what they've indicated to us. They haven't come out and said that yet, but you know, they kind of take their lead from the governor, so you know, they're going to push it pretty much every time the governor says something, they follow in suit with that. So we'll probably find out a little bit more on Thursday. Just so the board knows, every Tuesday we have an SWC athletic director meeting. And then every Thursday, about 150 Northeast Ohio ADs are on a call. And we have OHSA representation on that call, both staff members and board members that are on the OHSA. So it covers a lot of stuff. And it's probably just like you face, is that it changes from week to week. Every week, something different for us. But one of the topics that we've discussed extensively on that call has been the paying of supplementals. And I don't know, Scott, I don't know, did you share this? Has this document been shared with the board?
Yes. Are you on the supplemental pay chart document?
Yes. So if you don't mind, I'll just kind of do my little spiel here.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one thing that, you know, I'm obviously a proponent of getting our coaches as much as we can. All right. So if it was up to me, I would pay them 100%, but obviously there's more people involved in that decision than just me. And I get it as a taxpayer and as somebody that lives in this district, that you have to be able to justify things. And so I get that. But I do want to fight for those coaches on a number of different areas. And the fact that, first of all, I think those of you that have coached before, and I know there's a number of us on this, out of these 9 people that have, you all know that coaching is not an hourly job. You know, when that text comes at 10 o'clock at night, or that text comes first thing in the morning, or you have to meet with a student, I really do feel like we have a good group of coaches, and especially our spring sport coaches. Those of you that currently have student athletes involved in spring sports and have had them, you know, there's some really solid people on that group. So you know, I do you know, want to make sure I recognize them, that they do a lot that we don't see. You know, they do a lot of meeting individually with students and working through issues that, you know, can take things off of Mr. Wilson's plate, our counselor's plate, those sorts of things. You know, so their preseason work, you know, we talk about their preseason, but you know, most of these coaches set their own schedules. You know, obviously the league, we work on the league schedules, but their non-conference schedules are mostly arranged by them, emailing, phone calling, those things. This is all probably this is done before their official contract starts. You know, they're doing those things. They're doing preseason workouts in the weight room. You know, if they're doing some of their contact days, 10 days in the summer, all these different things go into it. So it's not just, you know, what we can visibly see when they play in the season. So for baseball, when they play their 22 or 25 games, it's not just about those games. It's about the other things that they're doing. So just wanted to kind of make that point. The document that you have that lists some of the classes, I would like to think that I came up with that on my own, but really we didn't. Just through sharing and just looking at what some of our surrounding districts are doing, that actually it's a little bit derived from what Bay is doing with their coaches. I do believe that there is some validity to some of these classes. When we talk about dealing with difficult parents, I think we're all aware that that is something that is done in every school district. Whether it's more in Westlake or not, I don't know that I can make that determination, but I don't think it hurts to, take an online class and think about those things. Mental health is such a big thing right now. I just saw today, I think it was the Big Ten is going to make that a focal point of something that they're going to put money into, is dealing with student athletes' mental health. So I think those things, one of the things that I've told Scott is that we really don't do a lot of professional development with our coaches, mainly because it used to be in the olden days, coaches were all teachers, right? Well, now in the new age, we have very few, or less than half of our coaches are teachers. So, we're dealing with people that, we're dealing with coaches that aren't in the day-to-day educational world, and they're out in the business world or tech world or wherever they're at. And so I think this is actually, if you want to look for a silver lining, I think this is really good to, make it's their choice. First of all, I think, which is a key, right? We're gonna pay this percentage, but if they want to earn whatever that percentage is we determine, then it's their choice. And by earning that, they're really bettering themselves, and by bettering themselves, hopefully that's trickling down to bettering our students and our student athletes and their coaching. So I think that's an interesting thing. I know that on the document that Scott has shared, he has listed, the schools in our conference and in the conference that we're about to go into, and what they're doing. It's interesting because the first time we sent this out, it was one way, and then the next time it was a different way. And so I know that, we're not a big school district. Well, if they're doing it, we're going to do it. And I know that that's something that, that we want to make our own decisions, and I get that. So basically, I'm here today. Scott asked me to be here. I am here in support of our coaches. I am in support of paying them as much as you feel that's worth. But I do know that they do a lot for our student athletes, and have been doing a lot for our student athletes through this all. I mean, having a son that's a spring sport athlete, I know that he had a FaceTime call with Coach Mosley the other day. I know that Coach Stepanek has been doing some things with his guys, sending emails and those sorts of things. I'm going to be on a virtual senior night on Wednesday night, I believe it is, with our girls lacrosse, who hasn't even coached a game for us yet. So that'll be interesting. I know on Saturday, our girls softball coaches, they're going to parade around to the 7 seniors' houses and give them their senior gifts. So like these things that, we don't always see, I think they're worth it. And like I said, I think that, we can justify, hey, this is what we're doing. These are the steps we're going through. And I think our coaches, my conversations with them and kind of floating this idea, hey, 50 to whatever percentage, if you do these things, I don't think anybody would blink at that. And then again, I think it makes it their idea. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent there.
No, it's very good, Tony. Thank you.
Tony, do you have, Mr. Cipollone, do you have some time for some questions on those things?
Yep.
Oh, super. First of all, thanks for always being an advocate for our coaches and our athletes. And so thank you for all you do. You had touched on, again, in this time of, say, no games, and as we have our constituents reaching out to us, and we of course want to be an advocate for our coaches and our athletes as well, and these programmings, these FaceTimes, et cetera. I think, and you mentioned too, that many of us have kids or many of us have coached, and it just brings back those memories of some of the things we may have experienced, say with our kids, or even when we coached a little bit as well. And some of that immediately comes to mind is, say, a Coach Romansky, and laying out there communicating with his team saying, hey, here's the program for the week. You're going to run 8 miles a day, and when you get back, you're going to do 10 wind sprints, and email me back your times, those types of things. So it's a coach setting out an outline of activity, and then holding those athletes accountable. And my first question is there that kind of activity going on?
Well, I will say that there is some of that going on. I will say that my conversations with our coaches, I have asked them to be very careful about, asking kids to, be accountable, so to speak, because I think it's very important for us to understand that we don't know what's going on in everybody's life.
Sure.
And I've made that point with a number of coaches. We don't know whose parents lost their job. We don't know who's not having a meal. We don't know those things. And so while I encourage them to do those things, I haven't encouraged them. And I think, Coach LaRocco is doing a thing right now where, the kids send in a video of them working out. And if they do a certain number of videos, they get entered into a raffle. I've kind of told our coaches, like, you don't require them to do things, but ask them to do them. So I do believe that most of our coaches are reaching out in some way. But if you want me to produce, exactly what they're doing, I'm probably not going to be able to do that. Although I do think a lot of them have done that. It's hard in the spring too, because you're talking about a season being canceled. So now we're looking at, okay, what's my next sport? So if my next sport is a fall sport, are they falling towards the fall sport coaches for workouts? And when you talk about Coach Romansky, for instance, while he's our distance coach in track, he's also our cross country coach. So does that look different, especially when most tracks are closed? So, I've been very careful about my wording because the OHSA has given us some guidance that, yes, have your coaches reach out, have them do virtual workouts, make sure it's an individual type workout. So I guess hopefully that answered your question.
It is. And again, I said, you're certainly an advocate for your coaches, an advocate for your athletes, and we want to be an advocate for you as well. And having that information is always helpful to us. The class schedule or the class offerings were helpful. And do you have, say, some control over which of those classes you may ask your coaches to take? Because as you mentioned, especially in the area of mental health, mental wellness, obviously huge. And will you, for example, mandate certain classes that your coaches?
Yeah, so the idea is that they would all take 2 for sure. So the 2 for sure they would take would be engaging effectively with parents and student mental health and suicide prevention. Those are the 2 that I think they should all take. Then there's a menu of other ones, which what I'd like to do is kind of assign them, like, hey, you 2 coaches are going to take this one, you 2 coaches are going to take this one, because what I want to do, my idea here is to bring them back into a coaches meeting and have them present on what they learned. So they're not just watching a video, having a little document and saying, oh yeah, we're done, that's it. But I want this to be proactive where we can grow. And I will tell you, one of the things that, if there's another silver lining to this whole situation that we're in, I've told this to Scott and Paul a number of times, is that one of the things that I struggle with, especially without having our whole staff being teachers and being educators, they all do, they have different jobs at different times. Like, I think that having a coaches meeting this way is going to be a lot better for me, because I'll be able to, schedule an evening time where, somebody that doesn't live in Westlake or can't, is out of town on business and can't make a meeting. Typically they can get to their phone or to a computer, and we can have our coaches meetings, when we need to, like this. So one of the things that I've really enjoyed and is really our coaches. We've had 3 meetings now, 3 meetings, 2 meetings. We have one this week coming with all of our coaches, our head coaches, virtually, and it's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. So but the other assignments, the other menu of classes, I would probably assign and say, okay, you guys, you two take these ones, you two coaches take these ones, and then they'll come back in and present to a coaches meeting.
I like that idea. Just if I may, I know you touched on it already, but a last comment that I have, mental health and getting back to coaches with these suggestions. And I know that a number of students that just don't have, say, that mandate to get out there, get outside, to take a walk, take a run, do a little bit of lifting, do some calisthenics. And I see it in my own house with Plain, who's living with us this year. Hey, I've got all my assignments done for the week. It's like, hey, let's head out for a walk. No, I'm fine. I'm going to watch a movie. No, you're coming out with me out to the Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and you're going to hike with me for 3 hours. And it's just, and man, yeah, it was a great workout for her mentally. Man, it was just great to get outside. And to your point, yeah, there's a lot going on at home. You don't know what's going on at home, but I think that this helps mental health and getting those kids active. Thanks for taking the time. Anyone else have questions for Mr. Sepulveda?
I do. I just need some clarification. First of all, I think the classes are a great idea, but, and the 2 especially that you're mandating, but you said it's based on if they want to go above the percentage for salary. So and it's their choice. So does that mean that some of the coaches may not be taking the class?
Well, I think what I talked to Scott about is again, I think like our student athletes with our coaches, you don't know who's in what position, who's what kind of things are going on in their life. So yes, to answer your question, yes, it would be their choice. So
Okay.
they can stop at 50%, or they can go to the whatever the percentage is we decide by doing these other things. I think whatever we decide to do, I think communicating that to those coaches to make sure and not, I don't necessarily know that it should come from me. I would think that maybe, the board or Scott and Todd, or the collective, all of us want to kind of, make sure that they understand how valued we think they are, and have some specific points like, okay, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, and make sure that we communicate it properly to them so they do feel like, they have a say. And I'll be honest with you, I've had one-on-one conversations with a number of coaches who said, I get this, some that don't understand why they wouldn't get paid 100%. And so I think it's all over the board where they're at right now. So I would think that the majority of them would say that, hey, I'm going to do this. I mean, we're all kind of stuck at home, right? So what else are you going to do? Can only watch so much Netflix.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, I was just going to say, do you worry at all of potential animosity from the other coaches? Now, I can agree with you 100%. A lot of the work is done preseason, scheduling, connecting, even deciding who to keep for team tryouts and all of that. The games are actually the fun part of the season. So I can truly appreciate all that. And I think 50% is a great starting point. And if they participate in a couple of those educational sessions, I think, it's going to develop them, and it's going to be good long-term for the students, athletes, in years to come. But do you worry that some of the other coaches may feel a little animosity because, they're going to get, 50 or 100% of their stipend, and we know there's different amounts of commitment from different coaches, and whether it be preseason, during season, and things like that. So I just worry about if there's going to be any animosity. And then my second point was just I worry about the fall, and I know it's hard to even predict, but I'd hate to be sitting here in I'll say October, and going through this exact same thing, saying, well, are we going to pay our fall coaches since we didn't have a season? Um, and again, we know there's preseason, the coaches are already starting working with the kids and everything. So I'm worried too about precedent that, as things go, because again, if we do this now, then again, if we are asked to do it again in the fall, is that, a harder conversation for us to have? The other point though, is most of the people in the Southwest Conference seem to be committing 100% to their staff. So it's hard not to go with what your peers are doing, primarily because you want good coaches. And if that's just how we treat our coaches, that's going to get around, and then people will not want to coach for us. And that's not a good thing either. So there's a lot of dynamics associated with this, and I get everything, and it's a tough situation. But I worry more of if we're setting the precedent and what we do in the fall. And I know it'll be a different world. Things will be changed, hopefully for the better, in September, October. But that's really the one thing I worry about. I don't want to.
John, point of clarification, when you say animosity, you're talking about spring sport coaches and other is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Your fall coaches, your winter coaches, things like that.
Let me take those separately. So I don't think that there would be that animosity, because I think those are two different circumstances. So, at least at the high school level, the spring sports season started. Now, we didn't play a lot. We had one scrimmage, I think, out of all that. I mean, the actual start date started. So there was tryouts, practices, those sorts of things. Fall sports, we're looking at a shutdown of school facilities until June 30th. So, I mean, I will say that I am very skeptical that we will start anything before August 1st. As far as I think what's going to happen is everything's pushing back until at least August 1st. Then you're going to have a shortened fall season, if a fall season happens at all. But I think, just like everything else, it's a day-to-day. So I don't think the precedent, I mean, I get where we're coming with this, but I think it's a different set of circumstances, I would say, where in the fact that this season technically started for all those teams, at least the practice times. We had the last thing we did was really our team pictures, which is always the coach's worst day of the year anyways. So I hated that day. So I think maybe a little different set of circumstances. That's just my opinion. Maybe somebody else could see it differently, but I think I'm not as concerned about setting precedent, because I think it's a different set of circumstances.
All right, good. Yeah.
You know what,
I
I agree with, actually, I agree with both John and Tony, where I think that it is something that we have to seriously consider, because, when you're talking about that, Tony, you could have the shortened season. And so what if it's shortened? Is it then full? So I think we do have to have that in mind, and talk about that. But I also believe, to Tony's point, it's a different set of circumstances, because we are going to be able to go into it differently. It's not like we started one way and ended a different way. We're going to have the time to be able to plan for that, and be able to talk to those coaches proactively instead of reactively. But I definitely see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
I really like the education component that you've laid out in a way to get people to find a way to better themselves through this terrible situation. And I really like the 2 required courses, and breaking it up, the rest of the courses amongst the coaches, and using that as a training opportunity. I think that's a really novel and unique way to handle it.
Other thoughts?
I think at this point, it seems like it's a pretty well laid out plan. So seems fair, equitable, and a lot of it's going to be placed back into the coaches' hands themselves.
So I think that what, the board will have to determine is it a 50%, 100%? Is it a 50%, 95, 90, 85? I think that's for what you guys will have to determine, what that top percentage is going to be.
And again, your suggestion is to lay out, say, specific requirements to get to, say, 100% if that's the limit.
Yeah, I think as we developed this, we started with I think, Scott, we started with like a 50, 75,
Right.
100. And then we thought, well, this is kind of convoluted. Let's go 50 and let's go 100, or let's go 50 and let's go whatever the ceiling is going to be. So, I think that for you as board members, I think if somebody questioned you, I think you could lay out, and I know that even Todd, I know in talking to some of my fellow ADs, the treasurers have had some discussion about this as well, from an audit standpoint of what, how are you paying these people if this is what they're getting paid for and there was no season. But I don't know, maybe Todd, if you want to weigh in, would this help you as far as what you need as far as your audit goes?
Yeah, whatever the board decides, this would most likely be included as part of a MOU with the WTA. And if the board approves that MOU, that does provide a point of reference for the audit. So generally, that will allow auditors to move past that.
So one thing to throw out that I thought was interesting, and I actually forgot we originally did this when we first started coming up with our plans, and that's one of the things we've tried to do with every component and decision that we've had to make here, is we come up with our plans internally and then we kind of compare it externally. And we did originally say 50, 75 to 100%, and we like 3 categories. And then as we started getting feedback from some of our neighbors or folks in our conference, we found, I know I was asking myself, because in my mind, you want that accountability. We're not going to have people receive pay without doing something, and so when there was that balance between accountability and then being unreasonable, because as you saw the different charts where you saw that, there wasn't a breakdown. Most of the communities don't have a breakdown of 50 to 100% or 50 to 80% or whatever it is. But we felt strongly that if folks fell in that category where they weren't going to do anything further than what they've done already, they shouldn't automatically be put in a higher percentage bracket. And now maybe it was a little unreasonable to create 3 of them, but I don't think it's unreasonable to create 2. So that's one of the things that we did, is we talked about it internally to try and make it as fair as we could and respectful, because that is the other component is, there is that, just as you're balancing the thorough versus unreasonable, you're also balancing the fact that you really do care for your coaches and you respect them and you want to make sure that they know that, but we are still guardians of other people's money. And so finding that balance and how we can be respectful to the folks who are supporting us, but also respectful to those who are coaching for us. And I think we've gotten to a really good place with the 50% and then a larger percentage that we decide upon. So I think that's a good place to be. And I don't know if we want to decide that tonight or if it's something that, we want to have this conversation and let people stew on it. And then you can just communicate with me. And then as I develop the MOU with our teachers union, we can put that in there and then you guys can vote on it. Because I don't think we're not going to take a vote on that tonight, but you can definitely share your feelings with me as I go and complete the memorandum of understanding.
My thought is a quick stew, not a slow stew. And Tony, I never want to not respect anyone. I always want our coaches and our staff to know that we respect them. So I never want to insult them. You had touched on that some are saying, well, why wouldn't I get 100%? And I just want to make certain I understand the logic. And I see, say, Southwest, a lot of 100%. But as the advocate for coaches, do you see the logic in not paying 100%?
I can see the logic. Yes, I know. All the 100% in the Southwest, for the most part, come with some proof So whether it be something that we're discussing or whether it be like, I think Avon Lake is just, their coaches are doing a log, of what their contacts and their emails and things like that. So I don't think it's like 100% done, hey, great job, here's your check. I think every school that at least that I've talked to, there seems to be some semblance of something that they have to produce.
Thank you.
I like the fact that, what we're producing is going to keep on giving, even after this is over. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
Is everyone quick with or good with a quick stew to have conversation? Anything else you want to add, but also to have conversation, say with Dr. Goggin?
Actually, I was going to say, instead of Dr. Godding waiting on us, maybe him and Tony can put together a recommendation and send it out to us within, say, another day, and we can provide feedback on that. And I
Perfect.
would think that might be a little quicker than him waiting on feedback or chasing us down for feedback, and kind of go
Yep.
that way.
Board, are you good with that?
Sounds good.
Fair, Dr. Guy? Cipollone? Thank you.
I'm very happy with that. I think that's exactly the way to go. Nice job, John.
Dr. Goggin, what do we want to talk about next?
I think that was the big topic for me. And I'm going to go back to the agenda as I'm looking at it. And I know it says discussions of finances, including payments and refunds. I think I would probably just stick with that. I know supplementals was a big one that we wanted to hit on tonight.
Right.
And I know we also have Mr. Wilson here, patiently being a wonderful part of our meeting, which it's nice to have you, Paul. But we also know that you have a line of people getting cap and gowns. And if you know Mr. Wilson, you know that the fact that he's sitting in his office and there's kids outside makes him crazy, because I think he misses his kids deeply. So, but we do have a couple items on here regarding those seniors. And so, if we can potentially get to that and utilize Mr. Wilson, it'd be wonderful.
We'll do.
Unless they have something else they wanted to tell.
I know, do we want to move on to board committee reports?
Yes.
Legislative liaison.
We got nothing. Everything's been updated since the last.
Student achievement, I'm going to move on to policy committee. Anything on policy?
We haven't.
I do. I actually have
Oh, you do.
I have a spreadsheet that I'll be sending out to the two of you with updated policies. I met with Jeff Patterson from Neola, and I do have some updates to share with you, and hopefully have something for first read on May 18th.
What's it concerning?
I can tell you. Let me jump into my drive. Let me jump into policies. Give me a moment. There we go. Todd, am I able to share my screen? Do you know?
Todd, you muted.
Give me 1 second and you will
Okay.
be able to. Bear with me.
I'll do a quick run of these. You'll see.
And you should be able to do it now.
Okay. Yes, I can. Let's see. Let's look at this. Okay. So can you see those?
Yes.
Okay. So we have some policies here. This is this is one where there's a bunch of policies that are associated with this decision, and it's House Bill 491. And it's a bunch of policies that deal with licensure, both classified and certified. And what House Bill 491 has graciously done for us superintendents is that it has shifted the responsibility of determining whether someone's licensed from the treasurer to the superintendent, which honestly kind of makes sense, because when we're actually hiring people, we should make sure that they're certified. the responsibility used to rest with the treasurer, which is why Mr. Hopkins is smiling right now. But now what happens is we need to send notification annually to the treasurer confirming that folks that we're going to pay are licensed. So that's just a change of responsibility. It's always been a responsibility and we've always done it. It's just going from the treasurer to the superintendent. And 2464, oh, this is regarding gifted services, this one here. And it adds some language of an opt-out for students, and also it puts timelines in for the gifted referral program. 3120 and 4120. This is basically a language change, getting rid of the highly qualified. So this is one of those that's going to be simply they removed highly qualified. 312004. And this is, again, something with a teacher licensure due to some changes in Ohio law. This one is specific notification reporting. This is different issues in regard to the transportation department that I can go through with you. And these are some audit recommendations. This one I have less of a description in. This policy I'm having Kathy review because it does have a breakdown of the new graduation requirements that we'll approve there. This one, you know what, I'd have to look up what 5460 is, but it's something with House Bill 66. I don't have that one memorized right now. This is a revision. Oh, this one is Todd's actually. That talks about electronic signatures. And then 6108, I had in my notes here that Todd can describe this when that comes out. And both of these are dealing with electronic signatures. So that's really what we have going on in the update. So I don't know if it's anything too exciting, but it's definitely good to do our weeding of the garden as we make sure our policies are aligned with the laws that have been passed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Were you able to find out anything if we do have a policy about fan behavior at our athletic events?
I have not seen that.
I couldn't find it either.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
When you talk to the Neola rep, would he know if there's some available or not? Or
Yeah,
I mean, I don't.
Someone I know, and I think it's Berea, who's on the school board there, that they developed a policy on fan behavior. I can reach out to her and get her.
I think it's worth looking into just to investigate.
Sure.
Moving on to Finance and Audit Committee. Related and somewhat unrelated, Todd, I'm just thinking about item 4A. How do you want me to sign that?
You know, that's a great question.
you
I will
The board office?
be at the board office Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week.
Okay, good. I'll meet you there. That's easy to do. Thanks.
Yep, let me get in contact with you tomorrow on a date and time to do that.
Fantastic. And of course, we're having a finance meeting next week. Todd's going to be sending out that note. And board members, please forward your questions, comments to Mr. Fanouken and myself, and we'll bring those to the meeting. Also, Mr. Hopkins has been very active and hardworking to make certain that our Westlake Educational Foundation is coming to fruition. We have a meeting next Thursday, the 14th. Anyone cannot make that 5 o'clock meeting on the 14th? It'll be very brief, right, Mr. Hopkins?
That's correct. This would be for the members of the foundation only, which is the 5 Board of Education members. This is not a formal public meeting. It's not a meeting of the Board of Education. It's the members of the foundation. So it should be relatively brief. The purpose is to elect the board of directors, the 5 at-large board of director seats. And, you know, we should be able to be in and out in 20, 30 minutes at the most. It does require that each of you, each of the board members, be physically present, though. The bylaws were not adjusted by House Bill 197. For this 501c3, House Bill 197 only speaks to the Board of Education.
Can you confirm the time on that Thursday?
That's 5 p.m. on
Okay.
Thursday, the 14th.
All right, thank you.
John, anything else for finance or audit?
No?
Curriculum committee?
Nothing, but I just think that the teachers are doing a fine job with their distance learning, so. And I want to let them know that we appreciate it, but nothing formally on curriculum.
Thank you. Community outreach? I will say that Westlake Bay Village Rotary had speech contest. Typically, not me.
Whose dog is that?
Speech contests, which a number of our students, even though we're in this situation, participated in the speech contest and really performed quite well. And you'll hear more about that, but it was super. Mrs. Davidson involved in English, language arts, always really brings that to her classroom and makes it part of her class. So we say thank you to her and thank you to the students that participated in the Rotary Annual Speech Contest.
Mr. Wilson, do you want to mention the computer club?
Yes, sure. Elena Prohaska entered our students into something this weekend, and she just wrote something up. I just actually received it at the start of this meeting. The students were entered in the contest for AP Computer Science and performed very well. They won that. We're going to make sure we get that out with impact and everything real soon. So very proud of them, and it's kind of cool to see that during a time when you can't really go somewhere, but you can work on your computer and do that. So very excited for them.
Fantastic. And again, that was Mrs. Prohaska's AP Computer Science class?
Correct.
Fantastic, thank you. If I may move on to the superintendent recommendations.
Sorry, I didn't unmute. I do have two, and that is why Paul is here as well. So obviously we are having a very unique senior year for our folks. And one of the things so Westlake City Schools requires more credit hours to graduate than the state of Ohio. And we felt that due to the circumstances for the class of the first one is service hours. That's another thing that we require are the number of service hours, and it's 15 per year. And so what we're asking the board to approve is to reduce the number of community service hours for our seniors by 15. So that if they were waiting for second semester or whatever reason it was, if they didn't get their service hours this year, that it would not prevent them from graduating high school. Additionally, we want to give Paul the leeway here that he can also waive some hours on a case-by-case basis. So if he ends up in a situation where it's just the right thing to do to not hold them to or hold them back because of the service hour requirement, that he does have the ability to do that. So that's really it.
If I could chime in, the students have been great, actually. They've been emailing me. Mary Dunn has been reaching out. Many of them, when we had our class, we had class meetings. So obviously the seniors were very well attended, and they did ask some questions about that. So they were asking if they could do things in their neighborhood, if they could help with their siblings. So the vast majority are not trying to say, can't do it. They're just, it's a concern. Even tonight when I was outside, a few students said to me, can I give you this form to give to Mrs. Dunn? So they're super concerned, and they have enough on their plate right now. So yeah, that's what we're asking for.
Makes perfect sense to me.
I thought they were gonna ask if they could come mow your lawn.
My son asked if he can count the fact he had to mulch out front. He actually asked Mr. Wilson that in one of those meetings.
Super. Then Dr. Goggin, you are looking for approval of the superintendent's recommendation 7A and B, are you not?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And 7B is what I was started talking about, is the fact that Westlake City Schools, we require 23 credits to graduate from high school. However, the state of Ohio requires 20. So basically, for the same reasons that I talked about with the service hours, for the class of 2020, what we are asking is that the Board of Education approves that we do go to the state minimum for this year and this year alone at this time for that same purpose.
Is there a motion to approve superintendent's recommendation 7A and B?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
I think it's the right thing to do with both of these, with this extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed.
Thanks again just for being creative and really having our students and their families in mind.
Thank you. They're doing extraordinarily well, given the circumstance for our seniors. So proud of them. It's incredible to just see them come through, positive attitude, picking things up tonight.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Mute.
Thank you. Lizinski,
Yes.
Fanukin,
Yes.
Kraft.
Yeah.
Pier not,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Can I ask a question of Paul before he runs out
Me
back
too.
outside? Paul, thank you for all your hard work you've been doing on graduation and with all of our students and everything else. My quick question is, and you probably won't know the answer to it off the top of your head, what do you want a board to do for graduation?
You know what? That's a great question. We were talking a little bit about that this afternoon. I think once I had a great meeting this morning with Mr. Warnke, with Mr. Zakelli, and some other staff members here about that. Once we get everything finalized, I think what we'll do is I'll talk to Dr. Goggin and we'll kind of plan that out, because it is going to be at this point multiple days in there in the PAC. So I'm sure that's something he and I have to speak a little bit more about.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I have one question that doesn't pertain to the seniors, but it regards the Washington DC trip that the 8th graders. I have heard of a school, in fact, it's North Union, which is down near Mansfield or someplace. They've rescheduled their 8th grade Washington DC trip for next spring when the kids are freshmen, so that they'll get to take it. And I was thinking, well, you're going to have other 8th graders going, and then if you have 9th graders going, I mean, we talked before about rescheduling the DC trip for the present 8th graders so that they could do it. But Mr. Wilson, what's your opinion of doing something like that? Do you think it's just not worth rescheduling it for them?
You know what? I think a lot has to depend on where we are in the fall, even where we might be in the spring. And I think a lot of it would have to do, when you get to the high school, a lot of the seasons and the activities that the students do, you may end up with a smaller number than you actually think you may. Planning a trip is something obviously we'd have to discuss, but I do think it's doable. But I think your ability at that point of the year, anytime in the high school, with all the sports, the clubs, the activities, band trips, those type of things, there's a lot to consider, particularly with the planning of that.
Okay.
Other comments? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Actually, I had one, Joe. Sorry. Actually, this is probably for Mr. Wilson. again, as Liz said, thanks for everything that you're doing. Obviously, there's a lot of unsung heroes out there, and you're here today, so we're going to give it all to you. But do we run a small risk of in the fall? Again, just trying to make sure we cover and think about all different options that might occur. If if we do a hybrid type of thing, and even though the state may say, you can do sports, are we afraid that maybe some parents will just be like, no, I don't want my kid playing, which then all of a sudden brings the numbers down to some of these sports significantly to the point where maybe you can't even field a team. I was specifically thinking of football, because it is a very close proximity type game. And even if it's delayed, you may have some parents that are just very adamant about, it's just too soon, even though the health experts and everyone else may feel, okay about it, but you may get some parents like that. So I just throw that out there as a thing to think about if you and Tony haven't thought about that, because again, it's one of those things that we just don't know.
It's interesting. In our meetings, we actually compartmentalize. We're even thinking like high school schedule. We did a regular high school schedule. Now we're moving it to hybrid, and what does that look like? I think the biggest thing that we've learned, and Scott last week reached out to the Department of Health. I think that's where our guidance is coming from, a lot of that. So we will work with the Department of Health and determine that. But I do think, like you said, I do think there are some people and some families, be it school or athletics, that are going to try to not have them come to school or maybe not have them participate. So I think as we move farther, like when I spoke to the seniors, actually when I had all the class meetings, there's always a lot of questions, and some of the comments or some of the questions come about that. And I say, hey, we're talking 11 or 12 weeks down the road. Let's think of how much has changed in the past 6 weeks at the time. So I think what we'll do is we will take all the information that we have and try to plan that out, like you said, and try to get some feelers out to parents and see, so that we have an idea moving into the fall.
I do think it's a larger than just sports issue, just even based off of conversations I've had with other parents. It's a holistic of, if you're willing to, risk it, and what's the risk factor for them of, sending their kid back to school, whether it's a hybrid or I mean, some parents truly think we're going back to a normal school start at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, a couple of parents have, I don't want to say jokingly, have said that they may just have their kids, stay home and look for an online option that's not, if by chance a high school and the district can't provide something. So that's why I'm glad we're doing and thinking of all the different options, because there are going to be those parents, and if we can, great. If they feel comfortable coming, great. And if they don't, I'd like to hope we'd have at least something for them. So,
well, the reality is I'm also hearing from, especially anybody who has autoimmune issues, or they live with somebody with autoimmune issues, it sounds like they're not coming back at all.
Yeah. Or multi-generational families with that are out there in our
The
city.
high risk factors.
Yeah. So,
And if we take that a step further, I think about how staff has really embraced this idea of online and distance learning, and how we continue to perfect it and make it best, and all those things that you mentioned. Yeah, it can be a possibility, and we need to be prepared for that. Other thoughts?
thank you, Mr. Wilson, for showing up today.
Thank you very much. It's there's still some cars coming in, so looks like a familiar car there, Mr. Fanouken. Maybe it's.
Shall we?
No, my daughter did not order it, and so she's getting one from Mrs. Lockshine's daughter.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, very good. Well, thank you. I'm going to head back out for the last 20 minutes and see
20
who's
minutes.
Right on.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much for your time. Have a nice night.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
To adjourn at 7:41 PM. Pure not,
Yes?
Fanukin,
Yes.
Kraft,
Yes.
Lizinski,
Yes.
Stoll.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do
Have a
we
great evening.
Are we done or do we have the next meeting? Is
Nope.
that not necessary?
We're all done.
Okay.
Oh,
that's
we
what I
don't
thought.
need it.
Yeah. Just wanted to make sure.
A little
Liz, are you
shorter
gonna
than
get
last
in that
week.
X-Wing fighter behind you and fly off now?
Yes, I'm gonna go. I picked it for May the 4th.
I know, it's perfect.
Guy, you're going to be at the Elks tonight, right? Have a good night, everyone.
When will they get to
Wonderful
open?
evening.